Okay, but really though, is there anyone out there who hasn't gotten completely sucked into a true crime documentary marathon? You know how it is, right? Lights are out, you've got your snacks, and all of a sudden you're like, the world's best detective trying to crack the case alongside the folks on screen. It's like almost a universal guilty pleasure at this point. But, and here's what always gets me. Have you ever actually stopped to think about why we're so into these dark, kind of messed up stories? Well, you're in the right spot because today we're going deep, deep down into the psychology of true crime. We're going to be looking at this 2010 research paper, and get this, it's called Captured by True Crime. Why are women drawn to tales of rape, murder, and serial killers? And yeah, you caught that right. The focus is on women. This research actually found something pretty wild. Turns out women are way more into true crime than men, which I gotta say seems a little counterintuitive at first, doesn't it? I mean, statistically speaking, men are more likely to be the ones committing these violent crimes.
It's interesting, right? The researchers themselves, they went in expecting the exact opposite. They even said, quote, "It seems reasonable to presume that these types of stories would be not only unattractive to women, but also repulsive."
Wow, talk about a plot twist. So what happened? Did they uncover a secret society of female detectives solving crimes from their living rooms, or what?
Not quite. But they did start noticing this trend in online book reviews. Way more women were reviewing and talking about true crime books on Amazon, while men, they were all about those war stories.
Interesting. So it wasn't just a fluke.
Exactly. To dig even deeper, they did another study. Imagine you're in a bookstore browsing the shelves, right? They gave people a choice. A true crime novel, a war story, or a book about gang violence.
Okay, I think I see where this is going. Let me guess. The ladies went for the true crime.
Bingo. Overwhelmingly, women chose the true crime narrative. And this is where things get really interesting because it challenges those traditional assumptions we have about gender and violence. It's like there's something much deeper going on here.
Okay, so we've got this paradox. Women, statistically less likely to be involved in violent crime, are more intrigued by it. It really makes you wonder, what's the deal with our brains? So we've got this puzzle, right? Like, women love true crime, even though statistically they're less likely to be committing those crimes. It's kind of wild when you think about it.
It really is.
So, like, what's the method to this madness?
Well, the researchers had this theory, and it's not as simple as just saying, oh, women are more morbidly curious. They actually believe this fascination comes from a survival instinct.
Survival instinct? Okay,
No.
I'm listening.
Yeah. They think women are practically hardwired to seek out information that might, help them stay safe.
Which honestly makes a lot of sense. I mean, we all have that instinct to protect ourselves, right? And the more you know about potential dangers, the better prepared you are.
Exactly. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to, well, staying safe.
Totally. But how did the researchers even test this whole survival instinct theory? Did they, like, make everyone watch Dateline for a week straight and monitor their stress levels or something?
Not quite. But they did design these really interesting studies. Basically, they'd make these tiny changes to true crime stories and see what resonated most with women.
Oh, that's smart. Okay, so what kind of changes? Spill the tea.
So one study focused on, get this, self-defense. They thought women might be drawn to stories where the victims fought back, maybe even made a daring escape.
Oh, like that one story about that woman who used like a bobby pin to pick a lock and escape from where she was being held. Oh my God, I swear I learned like 3 new life skills from that podcast.
Yes, exactly. Those little details, they stick with us, right?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the researchers found. Women were super interested in those kinds of stories.
Okay, so we're learning how to MacGyver our way out of a hostage situation thanks to true crime. What else?
Another study looked at the criminal psychology, like getting inside their heads. The idea being, if you understand how a criminal thinks, you might be able to recognize the warning signs in real life.
Ooh, that's kind of like Mindhunter. Remember that show? Getting all up in the heads of serial killers to try and, predict their next move.
Sure.
Chills.
Exactly. The researchers were curious, are women drawn to stories that really dig into the why behind the crimes?
Yeah.
Like what makes these people tick? And it turns out, yes, definitely.
Fascinating. So not only are we learning potential self-defense moves, but we're basically getting a crash course in criminal profiling, all thanks to our true crime obsession.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, what other hidden survival skills did these studies uncover? So it's like we're basically turning these true crime stories into like a survival guide, learning how to protect ourselves, how to spot those red flags, all that good stuff. Kind of crazy.
It is. And speaking of red flags, this last study, it looked at something super specific. The gender of the victim.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
How does that tie into this whole survival instinct thing?
Well, they found that women were even more drawn to the stories where, you guessed it, the victims were women too.
Which makes sense, right? Like, we connect with those stories on a much deeper level, you know? It's almost like we can put ourselves in their shoes.
Exactly. It makes that potential danger feels so much more real, more relatable. And it just kind of slams home the point that this isn't just morbid curiosity. It's about gathering information that feels super relevant to our own lives, our own safety.
For sure, all this stuff, the self-defense, the whole psychology of criminals thing, even this victim gender thing, it really does point back to women using true crime as this tool for survival.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like our brains are kind of whispering, hey, this might be scary, but hey, it could save your life someday.
But here's the thing. We've been talking about this survival instinct and all, which totally tracks. But could there be like a downside to all this true crime? Like if we listen to too many serial killer podcasts, will we just end up being more afraid of, well, everything?
That is the million-dollar question. And honestly, this particular research didn't really have a solid answer for that, but they did hint at this potential for things to turn into a bit of a, what's the word? A vicious cycle.
Ooh, a vicious cycle. Okay, tell me more about this.
Well, think about it. The more we dive into these stories, the more we might start seeing danger everywhere, right? It's like that saying, when all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Right. Suddenly, that dude on the bus who's just minding his own business, or that weird noise in your apartment at night, way more threatening than they probably are.
Totally. It's like we're basically training our brains to constantly be on high alert, which, I mean, can be good in some ways, right? Like more aware, more prepared. But then again, we might also miss out on just like enjoying life because we're so busy looking over our shoulders all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance, I think. And this is where it becomes a little more personal. Like each listener has to ask themselves, how do I feel after a true crime binge?
Yeah.
Empowered, informed, or more anxious, kind of scared.
Right. It's different for everyone. There's no right or wrong answer, but definitely something to, think about. But also, this research, it focused on the why behind our true crime obsession, but it kind of leaves us with an even bigger question, don't you think?
Go on. I'm listening.
Why are we still so drawn to these dark, messed up stories now? Like in the 21st century?
It's the question, isn't it? Are we hardwired to fear? Or is there something about the world today, with everything going on, that makes those primal instincts even stronger? It's got to be a little both, right?
Right, like this crazy mix of nature and nurture. We're drawn in because it's tapping into something deep inside us, but maybe the world we live in now, with all its complexities and craziness, just makes those primal fears even louder.
Yeah, definitely makes you think. It's this fascinating, complex issue, no easy answers. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so interesting, right?
100%. It's all about asking those tough questions. And on that note, we want to know, what do you think about the psychology of true crime? Hit us up on social media and tell us your take. Until then, stay curious, stay safe, and maybe, just maybe, keep that nightlight on, just in case.